Let me say this. My dad was not a Christian, and I was the first one in my family to come to Christ, and had the privilege of leading my mom to faith in Christ. But my dad's the only. My sister got saved. Grandma and grandpa, aunts, uncles, all come to Christ.
Yes, sir.
But my dad, he'd get angry when you tried to witness to him. And I got to where I quit trying to bring it up, and I just leave gospel tracts laying around. And I know he's reading them because they'd be here, and later I see him over here, but he's picking them up, and I know he's reading when nobody was around. And his heart began to change some, and first he became angry, and then he would say, "You're right, that's what I need, but not yet. I'm not ready yet." Well, then I was directing our camp, our church camp that we had. We had a family camp that we rented a facility, our church did, and conducted a family camp. And I was there at the camp about the wee hours of the morning now, and a knock came on the window from the caretakers at the camp. The last name is Hinky. I didn't make that up. It was the Hinkies at the window. And they said, "You have a phone call." This was before cell phones and all that. And the only phone was down at the kitchen of the camp, and they said, "You have a phone call for you." And I went down there and picked up the phone. It was my Uncle Ron, and said, "Tom, they just rushed your dad to the hospital, and he said it's serious, so you need to get there as soon as possible." So I left there, drove about 25 miles to the Greene County General Hospital. Got there. When I got there, walked in the room. I walked through those double doors at the emergency room, and in a small community, rural area where I grew up, everybody knew everybody. So when I came in those doors, I didn't have to ask where Bob Fry was, and that the lady who kind of came and said, "He's down there." She saw me, she just pointed me in the direction, and I went down there and stepped into the little booth there in the emergency room, and a young lady there who worked in our bus ministry, our church, was a respiratory therapist there, and she was at the head of the bed with my dad, had an oxygen mask on him, and when we made eye contact, her and I made eye contact, I could tell this is serious. Because we prayed together at church for Dad's salvation for years, and Terry looked at me. I knew this was serious, and she had an oxygen mask on his face, and he was gasping for every breath. And then I'm thinking, if you've ever been in a situation like that, you said, do I interrupt them to try to tell them the gospel, or do I just get out of the way and let the medical people do what they need to do? And so I kind of tiptoed around the situation. Finally, my dad reached up and pulled that mask off and said, "I don't think I'm going to make it." And he put the mask back on his face, and he was coughing up blood. And Terry would wipe the blood out of the mask and put it back on his face from time to time. It could not have been over 15 minutes that I was in the room when he just inhaled, and as though he never exhaled. It was over. Now, I wonder, should I have interrupted? Should I have said more? Should I have done more? I do not know. But as far as I know, with that breath, my dad went to hell. Now, my uncle, who I also saw got saved, and my uncle says, well, maybe he got saved. And there is maybes. He said if he knew he was going to die, and we had witnessed to him so many times, but I have no assurance of that.
Right.
Listen, and here's what I'm getting at. Even though he was a lost man, there is not a day of my life when I do not draw from things that he taught me.
Amen.
There is not a single day of my life when I don't draw from things that he taught me as a boy. Work ethic. In fact, that was one of the reasons he didn't want. He got mad when I got saved, and then when I surrendered to preach, because he said preachers are lazy. It drove me. I developed work ethic because I did not want my dad to ever stand in the way of my dad getting saved, thinking that his son's some lazy preacher. Right. It made me work harder. But I'm saying there's not a day I don't draw something. He taught me so many little things that I recall. He would if he saw you just kind of slouching around, he said, "Son, stand up." He said, "Walk like a man." I thought it was. He said, "A man walks like he's going somewhere."
Come on.
Because he's going somewhere. A man who doesn't walk like he's going somewhere ain't going nowhere. And just little things that he taught me. And my wife fixed the dryer downstairs. We mentioned the dryer, she fixed it. But I remember my dad having a washing machine apart one day, and we had all the parts scattered on the floor. And I said, "Dad, you ever work on a washing machine?" He said, "Never have." And I said, "Well, how do you know you're going to be able to fix this?" He said, "The people who put this thing together are not any smarter than we are.
That's right.
And if they can put it together, we can put it together." And we put it together and fixed the washing machine. My first car Seniors, you understand this. I came home from school and said, Dad, all my friends, their parents are getting them cars for graduation. All my friends. My dad smiled. He said, all right, I'll get you a car for graduation. He went to the junkyard and bought 6 Corvairs. Not Corvettes, Corvairs, and had them towed into the backyard. He said, if you want one, make one. And over the next 6 months, he and I built a car. We picked out the best of each car and put it together, and I had the sportiest looking Corvair in town. And with chrome wheels on that thing, racing stripes on it. I mean, it was a one of a kind. We built together over a 6-month period, and I enjoyed that 6 months with my dad more than any other time growing up, as we built that car together. But that was his attitude. Think about this now. He didn't get to finish high school. He quit school to go work in the coal mines to help support the family. But he was probably one of the best readers I've ever met. When I graduated from high school, I had been pretty lazy in applying myself, and I was not a good reader. And my school it's a public school, and I was not a good reader. I could not do college level reading when I went to college, so I had to take remedial reading classes. And I remember in that class, the teacher stood up and said, I want to demonstrate to you today how if you will apply yourself, you will be able to read someday. Well, he opened up the book and he went like this. He said, if you apply yourself, you can learn to read just like that with comprehension. Well, what he didn't know, that's how my dad always read. Every book I ever brought in the house and laid on the coffee table, he'd read it in one evening. And drill me the next day over the content. I hated it. But he'd read anything he could get his hands on. He would just apply himself to learning. That's why he was able to get good jobs later in life. And he was working as a welder where they would actually x-ray these tanks when he welded them to make sure no cracks in the weld. And he could weld overhead. He could weld every type of welding there was. And he applied himself to do it. Couldn't read or write, very little, until he got out of school and had a desire to read and began reading and reading and reading and was a very self-learning man in the area of reading. Everything he could read. When as an adult, he just applied himself. My mom, by the way, was one of those people who learned a new vocabulary word every day. Well, they were a great pair. She'd get Reader's Digest down and think, the vocabulary word for today, my sister and I, they go, oh, no. But my parents didn't have the opportunity to get any formal education, hardly at all, but applied themselves, worked at it. And they taught me. As far as I know, I'm only the second person in my family ever to go to college. Most of them did not graduate from high school. But that was never debatable whether I was going to graduate from high school or not. And my dad believed in faithfulness. We were talking about faithfulness. Every year, my dad would want to get the schedule of honors day at school. When was going to be honors day? And we said, what do you want that for? I wasn't going to get any honors from any academics. He said, because I'm going to be there to see you get your certificate. I'm thinking, what certificate am I going to get? The one that says perfect attendance.
Come on.
He said, son, even an idiot can show up. And my sister and I, year after year, got perfect attendance awards at honor day. It was not debatable. So I said, well, I don't feel good. Well, then don't feel good while you're in class. You're gone. It was never debatable. And we had a stack of those perfect attendance awards. My dad would show up and smile and be so proud of his kids because at least they showed up.
That's right.
And he taught us so many just real practical things in life. And I miss him. He had a nickname he used to call me Tom Dooley. And when I do something right, he'd rub my hair and say, you did all right, Tom Dooley. 56 years old when he passed. What I wouldn't give to have my dad's hand on my head and feel it there and say, you did all right, Tom Dooley. But it's gone. Cherish, if you've got a good dad, you take care of him. You love them. You appreciate them. And if you're saying, well, my dad's not, but then you pray for them. Pray for them. We need fathers. There are not many fathers, Paul said. Not many fathers.